let them have Saturday to kind of process through that by NCAA rules, and then Sunday come in, make the corrections from the game, offense, defense, special teams. Thought there was a lot of things we could get corrected, a lot of positive things. A couple of guys new to the scene that I was very encouraged with that we'd been seeing get better really over the last 2 to 3 weeks, and having that show up on Friday night was a good thing. Turn the page to Purdue, which is a very very first it's a rivalry game, obviously a trophy game. With the Canada Trophy, so that jumps out to our guys right away. But it's our first Big Ten road game, right? So we played two Big Ten games, both here at home. So this is the first one on the road. A tremendous challenge. Got to see them play Saturday live, and then work our way through the film. Obviously, offensively, a very talented group that has kind of players that on the perimeter. Obviously, number three is a really good player, and then the quarterback, whoever they have in there, really didn't change much in the game. As far as the way they were trying to execute, roll some guys through at the running back position. On defense, have a very, very good player. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, but he's a very good player and very, very strong, very powerful, very athletic guy. Got a couple guys on the second level of their defense as well as in the back end. So a tremendous challenge in front of us. And from an injury standpoint, Kramer's back with us. Should be full go the whole week and leading up to the practice, which is good. Josh McCray, everything checked out by about 1:30 on Friday night. I got word that he was fine, good to go, no issues. It was just a precautionary evaluation. Unfortunately, it took him out of the stadium and was unable to get him to return to the game. Chase Brown should be back with us, if not Tuesday, should be with us Wednesday for practice and available for Saturday's game. The same with Julian Pearl. Hope to get Keith Randolph back as well. Some of the guys have been a little bit banged up. They're just another week into our rotation into practice. So I'm excited to get hopefully a little bit deeper, stronger at certain positions and move forward. So with that, open up for questions.
Josh, I mean, on that run, the 38-yard run, he's breaking arm tackles. Obviously, it was a big run. When did you realize, like, oh, this is like I don't know if you assess it as like a special run, because, I mean, it just kind of turned into a moment for him, I would believe.
Yeah. I would say since December 20th, all right, is when I've kind of seen that run transpire. When I first, made contact with his coach to where we are today. He was kind of a unique process, just the way it kind of unfolded. You guys know the story. I've told the story about how his coach reached out to me, but then the recruitment, really there weren't many coaches on staff. I was kind of a one-man band at the time, so made connections with him. And until he committed, I guess sometime early January, and I've, once he got here, I think there was a big, every freshman goes through transition, but in Enterprise, Alabama to Champaign-Urbana is a completely unique transition. I've had kids from all over the country, but I think especially for kids that are in that part of the country to come to a different type of environment on his own. He's not surrounded by anybody else from Alabama. You know what I mean? There are not a lot of Southern players. So there was a little bit of a transition that he went through. And I think that first game that he was on the bubble of playing in, I think that kind of sparked something in him about the way he practiced, talking to his coaches and his people around him. And then we played him in that second game and obviously the Virginia game. And I told him, on Wednesday of last week, I said, this is the week. I go, you're going to make a play. You're going to do something that's going to go to the crib, right? And the whole stadium already kind of feels it, but you're going to see the reaction. And so it was actually the last play that I showed our guys on Sunday evening is I showed 3 offensive plays, 3 defensive plays, 3 special teams plays, and then I showed 2 plays that kind of were sparks to something special that unfortunately didn't manifest into a win, but it's an indication of what's coming. And I think Josh is going to be a big part of our future. I think he's a very talented player that's got a lot of right ingredients to make a really special player in the big picture.
What was the other one?
Seth's strip. Yep, they were, occurred within about 45 seconds of one another. Obviously, the downside of Seth's fumble was the next play. So, but the spark was there, and the difference was, as soon as Josh began to break it, there was we had 5 different views of every play, and then obviously the TV copy, and you could just see the whole reaction from our sidelines to the end zone to the band to an incredible student section that showed up once again, and that was just a totally different reaction, and then the only person that knew that he stripped the ball on that play was Seth, right? He like literally pulled it out. He knew that the player was up. The pile there was a ref coming right in on it. He didn't even do anything. So when I went down to initiate that call with the official, he just looked at me, and I'm like, that ball is out. I go, we're gonna, if you're not gonna review it, I want to call timeout and challenge it. And he like looked at me twice, and I just said, listen, I know that ball is out. I'm like, look at him. He's telling me what he did, So it was a great learning point, because one of the things we talked about during camp is a lot of times as head coaches, you have players that want to say they got an interception or they caught it or they didn't catch it, and a coach will end up burning a unused or unnecessary challenge because it never really happened. So I really emphasized to our guys during fall camp, we're going to teach them things along the way, and I don't know when it's going to pop up, but when it pops up, you'll know, and that was it, right? That was the moment. So I want to make sure our whole team understood that.
You made some big personnel changes on defense. Two super seniors that obviously played a big role. What goes into that process? How difficult is that process to come through? Or is it simple?
So you're talking about Seth and IG and Taz and TA. I think after the first game, the Nebraska game in particular, I made a reference to our defense staff that I really liked the way 49 flew around, thought he made some plays, just kept encouraging us to keep taking a look at him. And then I did at the conclusion of the Virginia game on that Sunday, I said, I want to move, I want to go forward, I want to start Seth. And then Taz has really done some really good things, played well, hadn't been able to play a lot of plays in a row. We kind of changed up what we did defensively, we thought might fit his game plan a little bit better, and give Tony a little bit of relief coming off the bench. But Tony was awesome all week, volunteered for every role he could ever imagine, and he'll be used again this week. So we're going to need every DB on the roster this week. So it'll be one of those things that just a game plan fit him better.
So many, with a close loss, I guess there's a lot of things you could look at and say, what if it was a different outcome in whatever player scenario? Do you go through that with your team, or do you see bigger themes to the game that you focus on?
I think for people that aren't in a building, you think that you analyze losses more than you do wins, which is the exact opposite, right? You actually treat them both equally, and they're both opportunities to make corrections. So with a loss, I think you obviously have to measure the deciding moments when the game could have been won or could have been lost. But the same thing when you're in any game that's decided by a 2-score game or less, you have those same exact moments. It's just not everybody draws attention to them. So I think our guys took the learning moments from this past Friday, just like they had in the 2 previous, just as much as they did in Nebraska. I know no one's happy to be 1 of 3. Believe me, I get that. But I do realize the amount of progress we've made. I do realize the amount of transition we've made with our players, our roster, our coaches. Brandon Peters was the first time he played a complete game with us. It's the first time he's had a 2-minute drive with us. All the things that we've had to transition through the first 3 games, he hasn't had that same benefit. So there's a lot of things that were gained from Friday night's game that a lot of people won't see or understand, but in the end they will. It just takes a while for the outside world to see it.
What do you need to see more out of Brandon? And Tony mentioned that Brandon was kind of frustrated with himself. What
Yeah.
conversations it was?
Yeah, I got a communication from BP on Sunday that I could tell that was or Saturday, where he was putting a lot on himself. And, I said, listen, my friend, this is the first game that we went through together, right? That you've played more than the first couple series of a game, so it's the first end of half, it's the first end of game, it's the first red area series you ever been with us, it's the first short yardage series you've ever been with us as coaches. So unfortunately, it's in game 4. People forget that it's his first time going through it. So there was a lot of learning moments for him, a lot of teaching moments, a lot of things he did well, some things he's going to definitely improve upon, some things as coaches we can put him in a better position. So there was a lot of really good learning, just as much as it was in that first game for Nebraska with Art, just as much as he learned from the UTSA game, just as much as everybody learned from the Virginia game. Unfortunately, in the way the games are played out, a lot of times you have to learn through adversity, and that's exactly what I know BP is going to do. He had two of his best running backs get knocked out, which also were probably our 2 best protectors. We had a situation in the offensive line where we're starting with Jarasati for the first time all year, and then also Julian Pearl, who had been playing pretty well for us at guard, was knocked out of the game. So, there was little things going all around him that weren't easy that magnified really the bigger issue of just being able to perform to win.
How do you balance the idea of when you play a Purdue-type team that they're trying to get you in like nickel and dime situations, but you want to still play to your identity on defense?
Well, I think playing on defense is totally different than playing on offense, right? So an offensive team has a better they decide what personnel is in the game. They decide how they align. They decide how they function. They decide how they perform. Defensively, you are automatically reactive to what kind of personnel they put on the field, where the ball is, how they align, and how they play. Purdue is Purdue. Illinois is Illinois. I think it's offense, defense, or special teams. We have to stay true to what we believe in will make us have success. I don't think you really adjust based off an opponent.
Brian sounded pretty comfortable field level rather than being
Yeah.
in the box. What kind of goes in? Do you have a preference where they are? What's it mean to have another coordinator?
Yeah, so I knew TP's a box. I knew TP would be a guy that wanted to be in a box. Before the year started, Ryan said he wanted to do that, which I was fine with. I want those guys to be comfortable. But really, after the Virginia game, we kind of just both. I was actually moving in that direction, and he actually brought it up to me in our meeting on Sunday afterwards that that's something we want to do. So it kind of met in the middle perfectly. It was awesome for me down there to. At first, I kept running into him. He kind of liked to stand right where I like to stand, so I had to get that adjustment. But I deferred to him. He's just got a lot of great savvy. He's actually a completely different person than when he's in these press conferences. He's once he crosses the I guess he doesn't cross the white line because he's a coach, but when he goes into the stadium, like it kind of jumped out to me, and I didn't even really realize it until I was with him in some practices, and the more I was around him, he's a very confident person. He has a very good communication skills. I could tell it and sense it right away with our players, in the first half, and then throughout the game. I mean, they played extremely well, and the way they were playing it greatly affected the way we called the game really down the stretch and everything that goes into it. The good news is that's his first time on the field, so hopefully things are only going to get better.
Did you like being on the field as a defense?
I was a defense coordinator. I was on the field. I was actually never in the box. I was in the box for like the first 3 games of my coaching career, and we were having some issues on the sideline, and Coach Fry moved me down to the field, so I've actually never ever really been in the box, except for in the NFL. I was in the box 1 year.
Is there something about that position that's better than maybe even OC where you can see everything?
Well, old school, back in the day, everybody was in the box, right? Coordinators because you want to see the field, but I think defensively and as a play caller, a lot of times you want to see the reaction. I think today's age. Now, Kevin Kane did an outstanding job in the box. He saw a lot of stuff. He had a lot of valuable information processed because Virginia did do some things. I thought Kevin was outstanding, and it's something that Ryan actually said to me early on was how much Kevin, Andy, Aaron, and J-Mo, they communicate effectively and kind of walk through things as a staff really, really well. So I was anxious to see how it would happen because I really wasn't sure when you threw Ryan into the dynamic how that it would just so much better. And again, Coach Boo made reference to that post game was just how much more he thought the composure and the collection of the things on the sideline were, which was really, really comforting.
You said Saturday after the game that you thought about putting Art in for that last 2-minute drill. Tony committed to Brandon being the starting quarterback next week and praised Brandon's arm talent compared to Art's. Where does Art need to develop arm talent-wise for you guys to really feel comfortable with him, not just now but in the future?
Which question do you want me to answer?
Second one.
All right. So Brandon is a guy that, from last spring to where we were in fall camp, earned a starting job. Was excited to get him in the lineup last week. Again, it's his first game going through 4 quarters with us. It was his first everything. It was his first end of half. It was his first end of game. It was his first red area possessions. There was a lot of things that were his first. There were some learning moments, just like every starting quarterback. He's definitely our starting quarterback this week, and moving forward, hopefully he's going to continue to improve and get better. I think the fact that he does have good arm talent is obviously something that is essential for a quarterback, but I think the guys around him, the players that are around him, there was just some things, even some of those deep ball threats that we threw down the field that we haven't been able to do. Those are things that now we see them live in game-like situations. Not only can the quarterback make adjustments, the players can make adjustments. So I'm very, very good about that. And I don't think I talked to you Saturday. Okay. I'm with you too. Good point.
Beyond the obvious, what does having Doug back at center just do for you guys?
Kramer is he's a valuable reason for twofold, right? A, he's very good at what he does. Like I've been around a lot of really good centers, He's as good as I've been around. He really reminds me of a guy that I played with, Mike Devlin, who played in the league for a long time, was a undersized, not that Doug's undersized, but he's shorter, right? He's not a 6'4" guy, but he's a guy that plays really good to his length. He plays well in the pad level, has got great balance. He's kind of like the old weeble wobble, don't fall down. He's just like really, really sturdy, got really good balance. But the great thing that he brings, I think there's two guys on our football team. When they speak, everybody listens. And Doug Kramer on offense and Jake Hansen on defense. And both of them are playing at a high level. Jake Hansen, and I know he's played a lot of good football, but that game that he played on Saturday was pretty special. He made the plays that he was supposed to make, and he made a lot of other ones. He's truly an exceptional football player.
How much is the margin of error for your team, and what's the next step into playing close games and yet coming out with a win?
It's a great question. It's never easy to win in this conference, right? Like, I don't care if you're going to see through the history of time, like there are going to be teams that are ranked high and haven't lost a game, struggle with teams that haven't won a game, right? And that's just the beauty of conference play, home or away. I think the margin for error for us in the infancy of this coaching staff with this players group is very, very short, very, very small, however you want to say it. But the good side is there's a lot of things trending in the right direction. Obviously, it starts with players and coaches. I'm very excited about the staff we have, but the players we brought in, I kind of just after every game, I write down notes, right? So because we had an extra day, right, I sat in here Saturday for a long time, watched the game several times, offense, defense, special teams. And before I made everybody kind of get out of here, I sat there Saturday and I looked back and I read my Sunday notes. And, in that Sunday note after the Nebraska game, probably our defensive MVP was CJ, right? And it was a guy that was my first transfer, right? And one of the sub notes out of offense was a guy that we needed to get involved that didn't get involved in that first game was Josh McCray, who was my first signee, right? Like, there's a lot of things. In the second game, we brought in Dwayne Johnson, who, in my opinion, is going to continue to get better from a defensive point of view. This week we'll play Kanena because he's just continued to be very impressive during fall camp and during drills. He's very athletic. He can run. He can strike. He can hit. And everybody was excited on that Josh McCray play. But when I decided that I was going to play Kanena this week, was his reaction on that play. Like, he did 5 bounds and a jumping jack and I swear he did a backflip. And it was just this emotion on the sideline. And you can't coach that. That's real. That's something that's just part of his personality. So I think as we continue to build this roster, every Wednesday night I do Zooms. I do 6 or 7 Zooms, and I get on with guys that we're recruiting who are, either committed to us or we're trying to get to commit. And when I listen to those guys and I talk to those guys, I realize, what we're building and what we're doing. I'm not trying to skip any steps to get to where we want to be. And when we get there, it'll be that much more gratifying. So there's a lot of positives, a lot of good things that are trending in the right direction, but that margin of error for us to have success is very, very small. And as coaches, we got to minimize that as best we can and put our players in the best position possible to have success.
Coach, I know a team is always learning.
You could answer until when it happens, but since you considered at least using Art last week, just how do you handle that moving forward, knowing you've got a guy that you feel comfortable with in that number 2?
Yeah. The only thing I think I said, I could go back and, Art had been through a couple 2-minute end of game scenarios, so that was the only thing that possibly could have been. I don't know exactly what I said, but that could have been the only wheelhouse. But on the same account, BP's done through them all through practice. But obviously, there's a rush in your face. There's things that are happening, and that part is definitely real. It's probably like any other position, right? Like, so the decision to put Seth in, just eventually came when we decided that he was going to give us the best chance to win at that position as a starter. That's why we did it. When we as coaches feel that, there isn't really a timeline, there isn't a deciding factor. It's just that's what it is. I think a lot of times coaches always say this, people say this. I think there is a lot of truth to it. You have a lot of times your biggest improvement from game 1 to game 2. This is really that chance for BP this week, right? He started games here in the past, but nothing comparable to the way our offenses run now or what tools are around him or the players that are available to him. I think he's the one that would probably tell you, and the players that played next to him, that everything that we did on this past Friday to get to where we want to be Saturday can be better, and that's the goal.
You kind of just touched on it there. now that he's had a full game under his belt, do you kind of expect the offense to be at its full potential up to this point, where everyone's kind of playing together, they've got the reps, and now you got your leader on the field?
Yeah, you'd like to think everybody's going to get better. One of the frustrating things for us been so far this year is literally in offense you have 3-point players, right? Guys that touch the ball potentially on every play. Your center, your quarterback, and potentially your running back on a running play, right? So we've had our 3 top tailbacks be out of a game or out of a game, both in preparation as well as in the game. So unfortunately, Mike. Chase has been out of 2 games and he didn't even participate in the third one. And then unfortunately, after Josh, you could see I couldn't wait to give the ball back to him, but we couldn't get him back in there, right? He wasn't in the stadium. So, and to get Kramer back, so yes, I get what you're saying, but we are driven a lot off of what we do in practice and the players that we got to play with. And when we get healthier and get more consistently with those players practicing, that's when we'll make big steps.
So you can't talk about specifics with these, but you guys offered a lot of in-state underclassmen. How important is it for you guys to be in front for some of those?
Yeah, you go back to, from day one, you get a lot of credit. Like, and Josh, when I took the job, I reached out to several Illinois high school coaches. You've heard the story, right? Like, for us to be successful at Illinois, it's going to have to be built off of Illinois players. There's no doubt in my mind. Every successful organization I've ever seen, not only in football but in life, right? A lot of times they mirror the people they're around, and we have to embody what the University of Illinois is, and what that entails. So it's going to be a blend of Chicago. It's going to be a blend of Central, East, South, and Western Illinois. I think without a doubt the better we can evaluate and possibly beat our competition or make decisions. And I'm going to be quite honest. Like, I've had 3 decisions already that I've had to make where there is a player possibly that is offered by our Big Ten competition, and I don't feel that they're a fit for what we do. And so those are equally as hard. Everybody sees the ones you offer. It's the ones that you don't offer, right, that you gotta make evaluations on and decisions. So like a decision to take Josh McRae, a decision to take Dwayne Johnson, really at the end of last year when a lot of people had already started recruiting or wrapped up. I knew when I saw those players where we're at. CJ Hart, right, a transfer player, right? I knew he would be a good fit for what we did off of what I saw in film and what I'd learned about him, and you get around him. So, like, if we keep making decisions based on those same things, excited to get some of our other guys out there, right? To get Armstrong, I think, is back full strength, going to be able to practice with us this week, get him involved, especially since you saw Eddie Smith play more than he's ever played this past weekend. So if we can just keep transitioning from our roster that we have a lot of really good players, but super seniors are going to be gone for sure. And to bring in transfers as well as high school players is going to be a huge part, and the ones from Illinois got to be priority.
On Friday night, the sideline energy seemed a lot more enthusiastic,
Yeah.
I'd say. Was that a focus of the staff? Was that player-led? Was it because of how the game played out? What was that?
No, it was definitely a point of emphasis, from the obviously the previous game was on the road, but our only sideline on the road energy is going to come from our sideline, right? It's not going to come from anywhere else. So that was a huge point of emphasis. And then I give our credit to our strength coaches, and so we have 120 players basically on our roster. 74 can go to the hotel. So, just simple math. You have a large chunk of players that can't play, right? Like I believe we dressed 102 that were padded up. So if the game turned in a way that we could get people in the game, we had 102 players dressed to play the game, but about 12 or 14 players that just medically weren't cleared to play. But what I had kind of made reference to is everybody was allowed to cheer, right? And I think that play when like I knew that Josh has the ability to ignite a crowd. Like when you're a player like that, like it's just something you have, right? Like literally his first play, the pass play, right, was a bust, right? Like the great players I've been around are the ones that when even it's wrong, it's right, right? And the reaction from the people is huge. And when that play erupted, when I knew that run, I was waiting for him to get in the end zone, right? Tip Ryman blocked 3 people on that play, right? A guy that, Casey Washington is an outside perimeter receiver. He runs a decoy route and drags his defender out of the bounds by just simply putting his hands out. And the only reason that DB turned around is the roar of the crowd turned him around, and then he was greeted by Enterprise Alabama about 10 feet away from him and he had to make a split-second decision on how he wanted to tackle that guy, right? And then, you know, there's several things on that play. Guys just, you know, Luke Ford had an unbelievable turnout block, which really made the play happen. So there's the energy of that, but the point I made to my point on that Sunday, like I talked about a word strain, right? Like strain on a field is easy to see, and the strain of Casey Washington running a decoy route versus Tip Ryman blocking 3 people, his strain is totally different, but the effect is the exact same. We had a successful play. But I showed the sidelines, and I circled Kanena, and I showed what strain was for him on that play. He cheered louder than anybody in that stadium. Like, and that's the stuff that will make a difference. Like, it's not going to be a great article for you guys. Like, it's not a great clip, but it's what I know works, and that's what I got instilled. Thank you.